I can't believe I'm about to ask this question, but Scott, are Audi really considering pulling the plug on their F1 project before they've even got here?
Well, that's what some quite respected German publications are suggesting could be the case. It's quite remarkable, isn't it? I can't think of in the history, quite the spotted history of F1 works teams and manufacturers that aren't fully committed and stuff like that. I don't think we've ever had anything quite like this. So it's quite a surprising development, if we can call it that, if it is real. But of all of the rumours that I've heard around Audi and sort of, maybe the project's not progressing as well as it needs to, blah, 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 I can't believe we're at this stage where someone's actually suggested it might be binned before it ever even joins the grid.
Well, that's the crazy thing. As you said there, manufacturers come and go. They change their minds. They bin off F1 projects after a certain number of years. Some of them consider it but never quite get over the line. Audi's in this weird void in the middle where they have committed. They've done the deal. They've started doing the work. They're hiring people. They're tooling up their facilities. They're building an F1 engine. They're buying a team. And now they're considering pulling out. It doesn't make any sense to me. And it's quite worrying. As you said there, the places reporting this in Germany are credible. So there is an element of no smoke without fire here. If there's any truth to this, I think this is a huge concern for F1. And after it spent years trying to get a VW Group brand into F1, it thinks it's got one. Audi are committed. If they turn around and change their minds now, I think F1 should be done with Volkswagen and their companies and just say, look, we're going to stop chasing you. They've been chasing them for decades. I've seen it in the podcast research I do for our Bring Back V10s podcast that covers classic F1 in the 90s and the 2000s. Every single year there were stories about Volkswagen and their brands looking at doing F1, and it was as if it was always come and get us. They wanted F1 to roll out the red carpet. F1 did that. They involved them in the discussions around the engine rules. F1's 2026 engine rules have been framed with Volkswagen and Audi in mind. If they walk away now, I think F1 should just say good riddance to you.
It would definitely be the logical thing to do, because it's going to look really bad on F1 if this turned out to be true. It's bad enough that you've already missed out on Porsche, which was the brand that looked like it was definitely going to come and join the grid, and the F1 was really confident would get on the grid. Getting Audi was still a big win, and it saved face on losing the other brand that you were chasing. I don't think this is going to happen. I don't think that this is true. But if it was, then F1 would have an enormous amount of egg on its face, and you're right, would have no choice but to say, okay, good riddance, don't come back. We rolled out the red carpet, changed the rules for you to come in, and you still said no. And on the Audi side, it's a lot more than just... there's an element of face saving in there as well, because how the hell do you get away with pulling the plug on a project that you've already sunk hundreds of millions into?
It's embarrassing.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a lot deeper than that, because they have sunk hundreds of millions into it. They've started the process of buying Sauber. They're a minority owner of Sauber already, and they'll own half the team by the end of this year or the start of next year. So that means they've already put probably around 150 million into buying that team, and they're going to double that amount in the coming months. Maybe that's why it's been talked about now as always this a particularly prudent investment, because they've still got a ton of money still to spend, but they've been also expanding the facility with new buildings and test benches and massive recruitment of staff. So they'll have spent tens and tens of millions of dollars there at the very least. They've also, the way that it works with the engine regulations for 26, so we've got the cost cap that doesn't come in just for 26, it comes in advance. So there wasn't a cost cap for the engine stuff in place last year, and that's when Audi greenlit this. So they've spent a load of money last year as well. This year they're allowed to spend, I think it's $105 million. It's the same next year. You can guarantee, because they've got designs on being competitive, they'll have spent $105 million this year on the engine. So that's a huge spend. And I think they've also invested some money in the Sauber infrastructure as well, getting some of that up to scratch, whether that's an increase in personnel or facilities and that sort of thing. So the cost of this project already is hundreds of millions of dollars, which is basically the number one reason I think that this is nonsense, and that either someone's misread something or maybe there's another agenda at play here, and something else is afoot behind the scenes, and that's why this rumour's come out.
Yeah, because the obvious question, if you're an Audi board member or Volkswagen board member and you're going, that looks quite expensive, I'm not sure we want to do this. A lot of that money, as you've outlined there, has been spent already. And actually, once you get to F1 as a proper manufacturer team, the big teams now are showing, probably for the first time ever, you can do F1 and make it profitable, or at least break even. So if Audi's scared about how expensive F1 is, well, that shouldn't be news to them anyway. It was always going to be expensive. But you're doing the expensive bit. The kind of the good times are ahead of you, where once you're in and once costs are controlled and the revenue's really, really good, that's the time where it should appeal to a big manufacturer now, because that's when this can all start to make sense, even for a board full of suits who maybe don't like spending that much money on motorsport.
Yeah, but do your due diligence before you start spending your hundreds of millions of dollars.
You shouldn't be surprised by it, should you?
Get to this conclusion 2 or 3 years ago, guys. Like this, that's why it would just be ridiculous, wouldn't it? That whatever your justifications for not wanting the F1 project, and where it comes from is basically that sensitivity to what the board wants, and that undermines a lot of works teams and works engine projects now, and it has throughout history, and it will in the future. So what's happened at Audi and the Volkswagen Group is that you've got a new VW CEO compared to 12 months ago, or 15 months ago now, really. You've also got a new Audi CEO as well. And those previous figures were the real driving forces behind getting VW and obviously specifically Audi into F1. And when they depart and they're replaced by people who maybe aren't quite as wedded to the idea of Audi being the VW brand, or any VW brand being in F1, what actually do we really need it? Is that really the best thing to do? Do we need to save money in other areas of the company, which apparently the VW Group does need to do? Should we really be outlaying hundreds and hundreds of millions on this? That's where this has come from, or that's the kind of logic that's being peddled as to why Audi might be reconsidering it. You've got new people in charge who might want to just review this kind of project and big spend and make sure it's actually justifiable. Now, that could be true. There could be an element of that actually doesn't mean that the actual F1 entry is at risk in any way. Because you might just want to go, okay, I'm now in charge, I didn't make this decision, just let me know the numbers. Let me know what we're working with. And that's completely reasonable.
Yeah, a bit more scrutiny.
Yeah, exactly. And that's where I think, I've said it already, that's where I think another agenda might be at play here. I think someone somewhere behind the scenes might be realising Audi's got a lot of work to do to turn Sauber into a top F1 team. It needs to put its money where its mouth is a lot sooner, in a much grander way. And maybe this is a way of lighting a bit of a fire under the board's backside to get them involved in the project.
Yeah, we'll come back to Sauber in a moment. But you've said there that there's elements of this that seem ridiculous. Another rumour that we've heard that I think sounds ridiculous is the idea that this whole project could be kind of transported over and Porsche take it over. You mentioned that the F1 didn't get Porsche. That's a whole different shambles that we've done enough videos on already. But the idea, is there any credibility to the idea that Audi's pumped in all of this money and all of these resources in-house at Audi's base, and then they go, okay, well, Porsche can do it, because you can't uproot a facility and move it to wherever Porsche are. So are you bringing Porsche people in to work at Audi permanently to run this? That makes no sense whatsoever to me.
No, you've got that logistical element. So you've got one, logistics. That just doesn't make any sense. Two, internally, it's going to be an absolute nightmare. Why would people that in Audi, representing Audi, have come to work for Audi suddenly want to go, yeah, it's fine, now Porsche can take all of our work? Or, oh yeah, it's fine, but I'll just have to do this in the Porsche name instead. And three, it's really bad. VW politics are legendary. And I just can't see a scenario in which Porsche's willing to take Audi technology and claim it as its own, and Audi's willing to put money in, or put in a lot of work, use their infrastructure, use their personnel, use their technology and expertise for Porsche to take the credit and then get the F1 entry. So it's just nonsense. Like that's surely not going to happen. There was some logic a little while ago to a shared engine project where, okay, if it's possible to do it and it works within the regulations and it doesn't cause an almighty stink within F1, then Audi and Porsche sharing a Volkswagen engine effectively, there was some merit to that. You have two F1 projects for the price of one, essentially. But
even if it's just a badging exercise.
Yeah, absolutely. But having one set everything up and have it housed in their area, then another manufacturer in another location coming in and taking it, and then it's them that get in F1, and the place that's actually building it has no F1 project or presence whatsoever. That just doesn't make sense.
There's a lot of this that doesn't make sense. Like you've said, there must be something behind it, because the place that this story has initially come from in Germany, these are credible people reporting it, and it's not like a one line of information and then they've built some fluff around it. This was a lot of detailed information coming out. That information only comes out if somebody wants it to come out. A journalist hasn't come across that by accident, have they?
No, I don't think so. So I'm not going to put any names on this or sort of specify the exact direction I think it's come from. But apart from saying it wouldn't surprise me if it's in Sauber's interest, or the people at Sauber's interest, to get Audi to put more into the project than they had done originally, because there were very, very clear lines being drawn between Sauber and Audi at the start of this. Part of that was sort of commercial and political, because you've got the Alfa Romeo title sponsorship, which ends this year. You've got the Ferrari engine supply that runs to the end of 25 before the Audi era starts. So the team's not going to have an Audi identity until 2026. Audi is phasing in its buying of the team, 25% now, 50% next year, 75% by 25, if I remember how years work. So you have a situation where it felt like Audi were actually being like, well, this isn't anything to do with us. Like, we'll get the engine ready. Sauber are sorting the team out, and then we'll come in when we're the majority shareholder. That doesn't work. They've got a really, really valuable head start at the moment, where they've got, from the moment that they greenlit this project in 2022, in mid-22, you've got 3.5 years before you start an F1 race. That is actually a really good amount of time, not just to get the engine project ready, hard but doable, but to also get Sauber up to scratch, because Sauber's nowhere near a top F1 team at the moment. Unfortunately, I think the way that Audi played it, I got the impression that Sauber really needed Audi to put more money in sooner. So my theory is, where this has come from, is, like I say, lighting a fire under the Audi board members to green light being more active, being more engaged in the project. Recognising that you've already sunk all this money in so far. It's not just about keeping the project going and not throwing it in the bin, but if you spent all this money, you've got to make it successful. You've got to make it work. And the way to make it work is you've got to do a lot more. That team needs a lot more help at the moment than maybe Audi was originally willing to put in.
It's a risky game, though, isn't it? Lighting a fire under board members, especially when the people now in charge weren't the people who pushed through this decision from the Audi and Volkswagen side to do F1 in the first place. As we mentioned earlier, there's been 30 years of F1 trying to get one of these manufacturers in. They've finally got one, but now you've got different guys at the top. If you're going to rattle a few cages to get them to put even more money in, they could go, well, I don't really fancy this. The thing I find fascinating is that F1 manufacturers come and go. If you're Honda, you come and go all the time. Sometimes you don't even get to go before you come back. We're used to that. What we're not used to, though, is the idea that a manufacturer could get this far down the road and then potentially decide they don't fancy it anymore.
Yeah, that would be the most extreme manifestation of bad project mismanagement and woolly commitment. And again, just to come back to the point I've made throughout this, it's why I just think that this can't be rooted in Audi seriously considering axing everything. It wouldn't make sense. It would reflect horrifically on Audi, on the VW group, on the individuals involved. And bear in mind as well, it's the people that are there now pulling the plug that would also cop all of the flack. It wouldn't be directed at the people that made the flawed decision to enter in the first place. It's the people that actually pulled the trigger on killing it. They would be the ones that actually got all of the scrutiny now. It's a huge decision to have to make. It would be an enormous I can't use this word on a YouTube video. It would be disastrous for Audi, VW and F1 if this was true, and I just think it can't be. It's too ridiculous. There are too many elements of it that don't make sense, and there's got to be something else at play. Whether that pays off, I don't know, but it can't be going in the direction that the speculation suggests it is.